Welcome to the show. Nathan Newberry here, your host. I have Angus Nelson here on the line. Super pumped for you to hear his story. He's a well-known coach. He's going to dive into his origin story and some of the amazing success that he's had for himself and for his students. Angus, super stoked to have you on the call here today with us.
Well, let's go, Nathan. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, love it. Well, before we dive into like some of these questions about your life and your story, tell us like the definition of what you see for yourself and for others of what like high performance is. What does that mean? How do you apply it? Like help us dive into what that means.
So I would say that high performance is ambition plus execution. There's all sorts of people who have big dreams, all sorts of people who say they want to do X, Y, or Z, but there's only a select few that actually take actions to build, develop, and believe in their abilities and capacities to pull it off. And that's the high performer. And I joked about this before we started recording about how I think it's like a neurosis. There's something about us that drives. And I would tell you, for most of the clients that I serve, typically when they come to me, they operate from a negative energy in that high performance, meaning it's coming from some kind of compensation, something from their past, a pain, a validation, an identity that they're striving for. It's a thing that's done with the right reasons, for the right purpose, but for the wrong reasons. And high performers, ambitious people who have this execution quality can be huge contributors to the world in amazing ways. But they're even more powerful once they convert from scarcity to abundance. When they're no longer in performance mode, no longer in seeking validation by the execution, no longer seeking the credit, no longer seeking the attention and the fame. But they're in a place where all of a sudden they slide from narcissism into altruism, and they make movements happen. Those are the most powerful, highly ambitious, highly effective people on the face of the planet.
So true. How did you discover this? Like bring us back to the day you kind of like dove into high performance where you saw the light turn on a little bit of like, hey, I got more in my tank, or you realizing, oh gosh, there's a whole nother gear inside me that I gotta really crank. Like bring us back to that beginning.
Yeah, my mom used to joke that I had a no half-ass button. Anything I did was like, I'm going for it. I'm just going to go for it. And I was one of those people I just described where I was doing things from a place of validation. And so back in, 1996, I opened up a nonprofit organization. It was a arts-driven youth center. We did concerts, poetry nights. We did LAN parties back before computer things were big and cool. We got the internet pummeled into our place. It was great. And we did music festivals. And our first major music festival had a band called Train as our headliner. We had thunder showers come in right before the show throughout that day, and they stopped right before showtime. I didn't buy insurance for the festival. I didn't think I needed to. We lost $72,000 that weekend. And for my small little organization, that was a chunk of change. I didn't know how to ask for help. I didn't know how to go to my board. I didn't know how to delegate. I just put things on my shoulders to prove to everyone I could turn the ship around. And underneath that pressure, it was, a workload of 60, 70, 80, 90-hour work weeks. My wife at the time grew to despise me. She says, why don't you just quit? Why don't you go get a real job? Which only made me drive harder.
Yeah.
And underneath the pain of that, I started drinking, and then I got into porn, and then I started sleeping around. In short order, I blew up my marriage, I blew up the business, and I blew up my sense of self. So when you ask me where did it all start, it actually started from the bottom, is when I just screwed up my life. And it was December 23rd, 2003. I had got divorced. 2 days later, I'm underneath my Christmas tree on Christmas Day. All my family had gone to see one of my brothers in a different state. And I was by myself, and I was contemplating how I was going to take my life. And
Whoa.
while I was there in the pool of my tears, I heard this voice. It said, "We're not done here yet." And that next week I sought counseling. I thought people who go to counseling are just crazy people. And in that moment, I was feeling pretty crazy. And what I found was the liberation of learning about what makes us tick. And it's all around our belief systems and our identity. And so that's when I learned about human psychology. I learned about, human behavior, self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and all these different things as I was going through my own healing process. And I was at a stage where I believed nobody could love me. I didn't know who in the city knew my shame. I didn't know who knew my story. And so I was afraid to go out. And I'm a really extroverted guy. And in that season for 3 years, I was a complete recluse. And while I was coming out of all of that, I'd been reading some books by a guy down in Alabama. And I was like, man, I got to go sit under this guy for something. I just need him to mentor me. And so in 2005, I moved down to Huntsville, Alabama, and began my journey. And I started learning about this really cool kind of, he had a faith perspective, and he also had Eastern philosophy. This guy was into essential oils before essential oils were cool. He was into like acupuncture and all these different philosophies. And I was sitting in the back of a class. He had these small little tutelage. And he said at this one point, he said, and I can share this with you from a faith perspective. He said, in our modern day Christian belief system, so many people will pray and wait for God to show them a sign. They're going to fast. They're going to, whatever, put out a fleece, like all the little terminology we give it, saying, God, give me a green light. Where do I go to school? Who do I marry? What job should I take? ... And he said, but in an Eastern philosophy, of which the book is an Eastern book, the Bible, it's actually something different, where God is a God of green lights, and you're just staying sensitive to the red lights. And I remember walking around the back of the room. I was pacing, going, could this be true? Could this be true? Maybe I have limited myself, feeling like I couldn't be all that I could be because I equated my performance with love. I couldn't be loved because I'd screwed up so much. I couldn't be forgiven because I'd screwed up too much. I couldn't be all these different things because I was valuing myself according to my performance. Flash forward a decade later, I started an innovation association for corporate brands, Fortune 500, all around innovation. And during that season, I'm working with Wells Fargo, General Electric, BMW, Coca-Cola, Ford Motor Companies, all these massive brands, working everything from C-suite, down to EVPs. And I would be on calls, and inevitably the call would go from innovation, digital transformation to my life sucks. Every time I come up with a new idea, that new idea threatens an entire organization within the company. I feel like people are trying to, get me fired, ... And I started recognizing the same patterns in these people's lives that I had gone through. And that was the moment when I decided I was going to dive in a little bit deeper and ask deeper questions. Hey, I don't mean to pry, but, tell me more. And one day, one of the guys said, Angus, you'd make a great coach. I'm like, I don't know what that means. I don't know what coach is. I don't know. And so I started my research, and that was 2016. And I started my first client in 2016. Took on my first client, and then parted ways from that company. And then for the next few years, I had day jobs while I was building my coaching practice. And I got into influencer marketing, and then B2B technology marketing, and then COVID kicked in. And I was already making more money coaching than I was in my day job. And COVID took away my day job, and I was like, here we go. Yeah. And never looked back.
Love the story, man. But bring us to the point of like some of the key habits that you had to ingrain at the very beginning, with everything that you had to do. Because I know a lot of this was inner work. Was a lot of it due to like discipline too that you had to refine, or what were some of the key habits that you had to adopt? Because it sounded like you were
Mm,
coming from a place of addiction,
mhm,
coming from a place of just like a lot of
mhm,
challenges because of
yeah,
the upbringing, and then the challenges from those events that happened in your life, But
mhm. Well,
what
Nathan,
were some of those things?
I'll tell you one little tool that was part of my practice. I saw Brett Favre in an interview talking about a rubber band, just a simple, regular, fat brown, rubber band he had around his wrist. And the person asked him, well, why do you wear that rubber band? He said, well, my kid gave it to me, and I don't want to take it off. I want them to see me wearing it out on the field. And I thought, that's cool. I'm from Green Bay, or I'm from Wisconsin, so Green Bay Packers is kind of our thing.
Hmm.
And my counselor had told me to give myself triggers to change my thinking when I felt myself going into dark places. And as an entrepreneur, holy crap, we have dark places all the time because our businesses are not static; they're dynamic. So you can have highs,
Hmm.
you can have lows. And in that same way, we need to give ourselves some kind of something that triggers us to change direction and emotion when we start feeling that pressure or pain, that rush of emotion.
Yeah.
And so I took this idea with this rubber band and I put it on my wrist. And when I caught myself thinking shame, pain, guilt, all the different, negative things, I would just pull on the rubber band a little bit and I'd let go and it would snap me on the inside of my wrist. And it was just enough. I mean, I was a sadist. I mean, I wasn't trying to hurt myself, but it was enough to get my brain to go, oh, wake up, wake up. Who are you?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
my entire transformation, I completely attest to changing my identity,
Mm.
seeing myself through a different lens. And it was an incremental, journey. And sometimes it felt like it was one step forward, two steps back. And then through time, I started taking two steps forward and only one step back until I could gain enough momentum to where I was like, okay, I feel like I'm on the right track now.
Yeah.
And
The
if
reason why I
anyone's
asked that
listening,
question is, yeah, go ahead. Carry
is
on, Angus.
I was just going to say, if anyone's listening and you're going through some of this stuff, I would tell you that everything you've gone through is nothing more than tuition to become who you know you're capable. That
Mm.
therefore you've never failed or messed up or screwed up so much that your destiny can't still be fulfilled. It may look differently than what you think it's going to look like, but everything you're going through is shaping you and forming you, giving you wisdom and insights and lessons for your future. And so we're constantly being honed and prepared. When we start to yield to that, magic can happen.
I love that. Because I know so many of us have those dark moments. And many times people, especially entrepreneurs, we just get so busy that we try to just ignore it.
Mm-hmm.
And I know oftentimes it's those triggers that make us wind to those addictions or those things like you're talking about. And I knew sometimes, I know for me, that was kind of the catalyst of helping me start triggering of like, I got to go in the positive direction and not go backwards. So I love that technique. I mean, it's a simple application of it, but it helps you really kind of snap into the phase of like, look, I'm going forward, and even the
Mm-hmm.
Bible talks about this, Paul talks about, I'm not looking in the past, I'm moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, so important for entrepreneurs when we micromanage everything or we have tons of responsibility on our shoulders
Mm-hmm.
that we don't know how to carry it. And
Yeah.
so many times, even our spouses don't even understand why we do what we do or
Mm-hmm.
even how we're wired in so much sense. I mean, I know my wife alone just has accepted who I am rather than,
Yeah.
feeling like, okay, that's just who he is and what he does,
Yeah.
rather than trying to figure it out. But that's amazing. What are some other techniques that you've found going back to this identity part,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I think everybody needs to face their demons in some way,
Yeah.
identify, hey, this is why I'm falling into that. And people
Mm-hmm.
don't even know why they're going backwards. They just know that they're heading in different directions, or they do it out of habit because it's so many years that they've just been in this cycle. How
Hmm.
have you helped people in the past with identifying, saying this is where you're at and this is where you want to be? How do you help walk them through with shaping that identity and then also creating habits of success to help them achieve
Well, in opening up the door of my intellectual property, I would tell you,
that?
no, it's changing your story is probably the first piece that we do within our program. Is we actually have a map of 7 different areas of your life, and we start with behaviors. Every time you want to move forward in this area of your life, something happens. Define what those behaviors are. So you want to save money, you're finally, going on the Dave Ramsey plan, or, some kind of a budgeting or investing, and you're like, yeah, we're going to do this. And it's in that moment, suddenly something goes sideways. The car engine blows up. The kid's schools needs, some money for some field trip or new books. And you're like, we're just trying to do the right thing. We're trying to move the right direction. Or what happens to us on the other angle is we do something to ourselves. And that's the important piece. So now I'm going to save money, I'm going to invest. And then I just found myself spending 4 hours on Amazon, and I dropped $620 on stuff I don't really need. How did that just happen? And these become behaviors that are based in stories we're telling ourselves. So we start with the behaviors in these different areas. It can be relationships, it can be around money, it can be around business or career or mission, all these different areas. And then what are the stories driving those? Where did it come from? Oh man, when I was in 5th grade and my coach told me I'd never amount to anything. And I'm just hell-bent on proving him wrong, right? And so we build these stories in our heads. And then the flip side of that is, what's the new story I want to tell myself? And we actually map down and write this down. And it just helps you to process
Mm-hmm.
the inner workings, the chatter that's in your brain, right? So these are some of the exercises that we do to help people transform the narrative into something that's life-giving, that's puts you in a place of power, a place of intention. The next piece of this, I would tell you, comes back to what I was saying before about that being, what does it mean to be a high performer? To shift from I'm doing everything for validation or to fill a need or to compensate or any of those negative things is to transform your thinking from I'm doing this to get that to instead seeing yourself as this powerful place of dominion and authority and glory all within you. And everything I'm doing is my gift back to the world. It's my natural, organic overflow, source, and supply. And so now the meaning and contribution I bring to the world is just the effortless byproduct of my being. And I'm just being fully me. I'm coming out into the world to shine. And so suddenly my greatness that I'm trying to show the world isn't something I'm chasing after. It's something I'm reflecting. It's something that I'm bringing to the world and allowing to spill out to everyone else. And I become a contagion of freedom because one of the rules within our program is what we call the quotient of nothing. You need nothingness. Nothingness is that place where I've got nothing to prove, nothing to lose, and nothing to gain. That's the most powerful person in any room. You go into most rooms and people are trying to, poppycock and poppycock. Peacock is the word I'm looking for. They're trying to, impress. They're trying to name drop. They're trying to look big, or they dress in their swag or whatever. But you ever notice that the one person who comes in and is kind of cool, calm, and collected, the person who has that quiet confidence, you're like, damn, that person's got it going on. That's the person who has nothing to prove, nothing to lose, nothing to gain. And when we operate from that stature, we create safety and people want to be around us because they feel seen, they feel heard, and you're not, trumping the conversation. You're not overstepping people or over talking people. And you operate in this place that's just so foreign in today's world, and yet so
I know
refreshing.
throughout the years we've had families together, and I know now today and age and ever we've had divorces and challenges, but I know like internally, I know I could speak this to guys
Mhm.
that the upbringing of almost like the rite of passage for men really
Mhm.
mean a lot because many times if people don't achieve that early on in their age, then they
Mhm.
try to get it so much, especially guys. And then you see
Mhm.
women doing that when they get hurt or they don't have a man in their life where they
Mhm.
just never been validated as a woman. Then they're trying to look at that and then they have poor relationships or poor
Mhm.
habits or things like that. What do you see that more now than even in the past, where the breaking of the family has then integrated the challenge for men and even women to really see that rite of passage, and then so they see the lack of identity or the rite
Mhm.
of passage, and so that's why they're looking at for other reasons in other places.
Um, yes, but maybe not for just what you described. It's kind of like what I tell my clients. I don't care what happened to you. I don't care how these beliefs got into your brain, into your heart, into your soul.
Okay.
I don't care where it came from because it actually doesn't matter. I empathize with you. I feel for you. That sucks. That's a really shitty situation. And what's more important is who you become, because it's the
Yeah.
only thing you have power over. I I've said I have some opinions about, all of the changing dynamics of family and gender and everything else, industry, and how it's effective, education. I have massive amounts of opinions, but even my opinions don't matter to why some of us are in the places we're at. My whole mission, I feel, in my life is not to help people look backwards, but rather to look forward, kind of like
Love
what you
that.
just said, right? And we can choose, and when I say forward, let me define this. It's one of those dualities, and the duality meaning forward comes from the present. And let me define. Most people
Okay.
look backwards and say, man, it's one of two things. Either, man, I wish it could be like that again. Man, you remember back when we had the good old days? Remember when we could, or like, what was it, Napoleon Dynamite and Uncle
Yeah.
Ricky? Oh, you just put me in. We could have gone to state. I could throw this, football a quarter mile, blah, blah, blah. And people spend their lives looking at what once was as beautiful and awesome and amazing. And if we could just get back together, which is impossible.
Hmm.
Or they had something really bad and negative, maybe even like my story. And now they're dragged down by that anchor.
Yeah.
Man, I could never get something else because of that divorce. I could never get any of this because of that addiction. I could never get any of this because of that shame, guilt, prison sentence, blah, blah, blah. That's where most people are. It's one of those two things. And then there are others, and the aspirational people I would put in this are constantly looking at the future. I'll be happy when I get that house, I get that car, I get that da-da-da, when I have that esteem, when I have that validation, then I'll be happy. And
Yeah.
even then, it's like you get the thing, and then you want another thing, and then another thing until you'll be happy. So all of that's just a trap versus the only thing that you can control is right now. And somebody shared this with me. The acronym of today is the only day actually yours. So what if we could live in the present and be completely focused on the only thing I can really control, and the people that I can love, and the time that I can respect and honor, and the meaning and contribution that I can give and pass along. And now if I just incrementally say, I'm just going to be 100% involved with today. I'm just going to be focused on today. And in and of myself, I just want to develop me just 1% of that
Mm-hmm.
100% I'm giving to it to increase 1% of my quality of caliber of life, of being, of leader, of mankind, of fatherhood, of motherhood, of whatever the thing is. Because now when you live in the present from that power, the momentum you build and how you show up today spills into tomorrow. And then tomorrow you focus on today, and today gets that incremental 1%, and then today becomes that next tomorrow with the spillover of that momentum, and then the next day incrementally gets to the next 1%, and then the next, and now you're living in the future by living today, and that becomes the duality.
Mm-hmm.
We're so busy looking at one way or the other, past or present, that we miss the very thing that is what makes life worth living anyway. And it's today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Powerful words. You're preaching it. This is amazing. Transformation is so key and important for everything that everybody does. How, if you had the elevator pitch of tools that you would give someone and say, hey, if you just focused on these things, these few things, what would that be?
Mindset. Everything comes back to how you believe about you. If you're going to work on anything, and as a coach, I'm not saying I have to be your coach, but I encourage you to get somebody outside yourself. And maybe if you want to feel safe, start with a therapist, start with a counselor. But none of us have the ability to read the label on our own jar.
Mm-hmm.
We need somebody on the outside who can love us or be honest enough with us to just show us the mirror. Hey, bro, look right here. You've had broccoli in your teeth since lunchtime. Are you going to do something about that? That's one funny way of saying there are areas of our life that someone who truly loves us and can be honest and speak truth and say, you're kind of a jackass when you're tired. You probably need to get some rest. You need to get some emotional equilibrium in your life. Maybe you need to work through some stress, work through, some yoga, some exercise, get in the gym. Maybe you need some tapping. Maybe you need some meditation. Like somebody who's going to not only give you an honest reflection, but then they're going to be with you through the transformation to hold you accountable. We say without accountability, there's no motivation for change. And there's something when you have to show up before somebody's beady eyes and you got to speak truth. Like, I own that this week. I screwed up. I didn't do what I said I was going to do. Okay, well, let's step up to the next level. Let's raise our standards and have a higher expectation of self. How's that sound? Mm-hmm. Damn, that's going to hurt. But yes, I'm in. Let's go. And then the mindset is that transformation piece of how will I believe differently about myself? Willing to say, I deserve, I'm worthy, and I have what it takes. And those three core components can make you bulletproof when you know that you are enough.
Amazing, man. So tell us a little bit about how people can find you, Angus. How can people connect with you? Mm-hmm. Where can people find you online? I'll leave all these links down below too.
Yeah, you can search Angus Nelson. If I were going to point you in one direction, and not the band, go to Instagram, follow me there at Angus Nelson, all one word. If you jump into the DM and shoot me the word blocker, I'm going to send you an assessment that's going to show you one of 6 areas in your life that's standing in the way between you and the wealthy life that you desire. It's going to uncap, unpack, unleash. Maybe not unleash, but it's going to reveal to you the thing that's holding you back. And it takes like 2 to 3 minutes to finish. It feels like, oh, this could be super simple. And then when you see what the answer is, it's very unlikely that you're going to be able to deny that it's true. And then the next step is, what are you going to do about it? So Amazing. Jump into Instagram, shoot me a message, blocker.
Any last words for us before we wrap up the call today? Any words of wisdom that you would give?
To add the cherry on top, I would say this. Let's go back to that nothingness. Everything that you seek, everything you desire, everything that you want as a high performer is less about you wielding, controlling, manufacturing, and more about you letting go and yielding. Every area of your leadership requires you to let go, and the higher you go, the more you need to let go. It's the only way that you can build a team that's effective. It's the only way you can release your time to be effective. It's the only way you can trust the team that you're building. And it's the one thing that keeps you on an energetic level for expansion. If you try and control it, you will contain it. If you let go, you will set it free.
Amazing. Appreciate you being on the call here, Angus. I know so many people got some gold nuggets from our short conversation here about just high performance and the amazing things you do to help people. Again, I'll put all those links down below so people connect with Angus further. But until then, we'll wrap up the call from here.
Thanks so much, Nathan. It's great to be here.